Hello and welcome to my senior capstone. My name is Virginia Long and I'm a sociology major here at Presbyterian College. Today we're looking at demographic factors' influence on the transferring of political affiliation from parent to offspring. And this is a project that I started last semester with Dr. McAdams in my empirical research analysis course. And we're going to be looking at some further research today. And throughout the video and after the video, if you have any questions, keep them in mind and you can leave them in the comment section and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. So just to start things off, for first, our research question is, how do variables such as age and socioeconomic status affect the transferring of political party affiliation from parent to offspring? And throughout this presentation, socioeconomic status will be abbreviated as SES. And our variables. First, our independent variable, which is the variable that's not being changed by the other variable, is age, SES, and parent number 1 and number 2's political party affiliation. And later in the presentation, political party affiliation will be further defined. The dependent variable, which is the variable whose value does depend on the other one, is the offspring's political party affiliation. And to have good research, I have to address the confounding variables. A confounding variable is a variable that influences both the independent and dependent variable and can skew or affect our research. And for this assignment, the political socialization of a parent and offspring, new social contexts, political issues, and salient political events were found to be possible effects on the independent and dependent variables and should be accounted for when looking at our research study. Throughout the process of writing the essay, prior research was extremely important. And prior research that is especially highlighted while looking at our independent and dependent variables was Donatello's 2019, The Mobilization of Millennials, Kuhn's 1962, The Paradigm Shift, Kingston's The Diacritic and Syncratic Meaning of Generation, and Walge's Generational Differences. Throughout my essay, all of these aspects were expanded on, and they helped explain why the independent and dependent variables may have affected each other how they did. So to get into our theory, my research question, which we already said, is how do demographic factors such as age and socioeconomic status affect the transfer of political party affiliation from parent to offspring? And when moving forward in this research, first I had to take a step back and recognize confounding factors and cite our prior research. While I listed a few in the previous slide, there were a lot more prior research and studies that were looked at. Specifically with Dr. McAdams, I looked at a study which is where I gathered my statistical descriptions from, and it was based on a lot of other variables that could affect the political affiliation transfer, but that's where we specifically picked out SES of parent and offspring and socioeconomic status from a larger study. So my hypothesis, this is a multifaceted study, so we had two hypotheses. The alternative hypothesis number 1 was the age difference of parents and offspring will have a significant impact on the transferring of political affiliation. And later in the presentation, while we're looking at our data, the meaning of have a significant impact will be further explained. The null hypothesis, which is the rejection of the alternative hypothesis, is that there is no correlation between the age difference of parents and offspring and the transferring of political affiliation. The null hypothesis in this is just a complete rejection of what was predicted in the actual hypothesis. And the alternative hypothesis number 2 is that the socioeconomic status of a family will have a high level of impact on the transferring of political affiliation from a parent and offspring due to a strong relationship between the two. And the null hypothesis of this will reject that there is a high level impact or that there's a relationship between the two variables. So null hypothesis number 2 is there is no correlation between the socioeconomic status of a family and the transferring of political affiliation from parent to offspring. Now that we have our hypothesis laid out, we can run our tests through our SPSS system to see if these are rejected or supported through our statistics. So before we can look at that, let's go over our research methods and data that was used. So this research was categorically sorted data from what we used from our study. And this means that the categories were sorted by order and not value, how they were ranked. So an example of this was political party options, where it was ranked like from Republican, Democratic, and other. Those are all different number ranks, but neither one has a greater value than the other. Same with some of our other statistics that we will look at. And using our SPSS system, we ran chi-squares, descriptive statistics, and cross tabulations, which I will also further explain while we are looking at those results. This experiment is empirical research, meaning that it's based off of observation and measure of phenomena, and it is a quantitative research study, meaning it's a process of collecting and analyzing numerical data. So let's dive into our analysis and findings. Number one, this is our first descriptive statistic. This is one of the first things that I ran in our study because I took our socioeconomic status of household grown up in, respondents' political party identification of the first parent and second parent, and age of respondents, which were our variables we're looking at. And I was able to run them through our modes of measurement. We have the mean, median, and mode, and standard deviation for each of these. So this was a good way to get a good understanding of what was the valid number of cases and missing, and get a good idea of what we were looking at and where data could possibly be skewed or affected throughout this. Variable number one is age, and we ran this cross tabulation in our chi-square. And it was able to confirm through our Pearson chi-square that since the p-value is 0.005, which is less than the 0.05 required, the parents and offspring do have a significant impact on each other, meaning that we can support the hypothesis and reject the null hypothesis. And the number of valid cases for this was 1,998, which is a large sample size, and it can help our case. And we can see here some of our categorically sorted data for political party identification options of I don't know, independent, Republican, and Democrat, and other. While these are different categories, neither one is ranked higher than the other. And our second variable is SES. And as this one is also ranked from poor, lower class, lower middle class, upper middle class, and upper class, as well as with the political party identification. This one does have a slightly lower total of cases. It's only down by 7, but it's still notable to see we have a difference. And if we look at our chi-square test that we ran in SPSS, can see that there is a significance p level of 0.003, which is also less than the 0.05 required. So it can be confirmed that there is a statistical significance between the two variables, meaning we can support our alternative hypothesis and reject our null hypothesis. And the hypothesis for the SES was that there will be a high level of impact between the two, and that there is a relationship between the two variables. Oops, excuse me. And for our discussion and conclusion, going over what I just read from our graph, it was determined that for age difference variable, due to the p-value, the null hypothesis can be rejected and the alternative hypothesis can be accepted. This means that the age difference of parents and offspring does have a significant impact on the transfer of political party affiliation. And for SES, socioeconomical status, due to the p-value, the null hypothesis can be rejected and the alternative hypothesis can be accepted. So I just want to go over some conclusions. We were able to gather from a large case study that I started with Dr. McAdams last semester, a Tisch University study, and break it down to the variables that we chose, which were SES and age, and able to run some statistical descriptives and see if there is actually a significant difference between the variables that we chose, and we are able to determine that there was for both of our hypotheses were accepted and our null hypothesis were rejected. So this was a very eye-opening experience for me, being able to run experiments and run statistical descriptives and learn how to do this as a sociology major. And I am looking forward to being able to do more things like this in the future. And of course, I'm still learning, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to further my knowledge on this. And I'm excited to see where the future takes me with this. And I'm very thankful to Dr. McAdams and Dr. Alfonso for all of their help and just for my experience here as a senior. And if you had any questions throughout the presentation, or if there's any comments you'd like to make, please leave them in the comment section below and I will get to them ASAP. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Have a good day.